Hi everyone and welcome to Emsi webinars. Today is part one of our latest skills advisory panel webinars. There are a couple of ones we've done previously on this subject which are available on our YouTube channel. Today we're going to be focusing partly on how Emsi's Analyst tool can provide a robust evidence base to inform decision making related to local skills needs in your area's labour market. My name is Will Cookson. I'm the Director for Economic Development at Emsi UK. In today's webinar, we are joined by Martin Gerard, who some of you may know is our Account Director for Economic Development Customers. Martin will be sharing some best practice captured from our work with LEPs, mayoral combined authorities and other stakeholders in regards to the Skills Advisory Panel's work. I should say, a bit of housekeeping. All of the slides that we'll go through will be shared with everyone by email after we've recorded and finished this. A recording of the webinar will also be shared. And please feel free to ask any questions in the box on your control panel at any time, and we'll do our best to answer them towards the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I will continue. So the agenda today, introductions, which we've done. We're going to look briefly at the role of SAPs. We're going to have a quick look at Emsi data and how that relates. We're going to look at the challenge that's been set by DfE, approaches to interpreting the DfE toolkit. We're going to look at ways in which supply side data from skills providers can be captured. We're going to have a look at course vision and job posting analytics, and threaded throughout we'll be looking at best practice as well, and at the end there'll be an opportunity to answer questions that have been raised, and then we'll provide a summary. So the role of skills advisory panels, essentially SAPs will help mayoral combined authorities, Greater London Authority and LEPs fulfil their requirement to understand their current and future skills needs and labour market challenges. These will be local partnerships involving stakeholders and strengthening that link between private sector employers, local authorities, colleges and universities. LEPs and mayoral combined authorities are responsible for decision making in regards to large amounts of public funding and how that's spent. And with that comes obviously a need to understand current and future skills needs in their local areas to help them do that effectively. On the 6th of December last year, the Secretary of State for Education, Damien Hines, set out the government's plans to get more people into skilled jobs, committed additional funding to LEPs and mayoral combined authorities for 1 year, to support the further development of skills advisory panels and giving clear accountability to the skills advisory panels for matching skills with local labour market need. On the back of that, the Department for Education also released a toolkit which we will be going through. So a brief introduction to Emsi. Our mission is to help people make better decisions relating to the world of work. We do this through the provision of robust details and localised labour market insight, or LMI, in a proprietary data set. Emsi has a number of ways in which to understand local labour markets, but essentially we provide robust job counts for all four-digit occupations, or SOCs, and four-digit industries, or SIC. And that goes back to 2003 down to local authority district level, or LAU1, with projections going out to 2027. Estimates of job openings for four-digit occupations can go forward to 2027, including expansion demand and replacement demand. We also bring in job posting data, capturing 800,000 unique postings every month. We've been doing that since January 2016, and those are tagged to town, local authority, job title, and also mapped across to four-digit SOC or occupation codes. What we're trying to do is capture the detail of recruitment activity in regards to skills and employer data. So we have tools, which some of you will be aware of, and methods to allow for the comparative analysis of education supply data with labour market demand data. So this includes being able to map and turn FE and HE courses into standard categories. This is much richer than that's provided by the standard subject area taxonomy. Emsi has created an additional tier to the taxonomy, or the SSA taxonomy, which takes it from 49 categories in SSA2, allowing for a rich depiction of qualification supply mapped through to occupations. The mapping from subject areas to occupations is a way to be able to identify which occupations have direct skill relevance to a given subject area. This allows for translation of labour market and educational data into a common form and a substantive evidence base. The methodologies we have allow for analysis which accepts the messy nature of matching between subjects and occupations, but which accounts for the potential to double count when estimating the size of those gaps. So we try and take that into account. So the challenge for SAPs essentially is regards to understanding local demand across LEP geography. It's in regards to capturing the complete picture of supply side skills provision data. That's everything from independent training providers through to HE. There are challenges then in regards to understanding remote delivery, which might be delivered by a remote campus. And we also recognise the challenge in regards to engaging and involving stakeholders. And when we're talking about stakeholders, obviously there's a broad range of stakeholders involved, but the key stakeholders I feel in regards to skills advisory panel work will be the provider base and how engaged they are in regards to discussions about future delivery. There's a challenge in regards to how to influence future provision. So you can have the data, but how do you actually influence the direction of skills provision in your local area? Also the challenge in regards to prioritising the activity in relation to the DfE toolkit. So you may have noticed, and I will mention this towards the end, we've split out our skills advisory panel webinars into two sets. This one will be looking primarily at how approaches to understanding supply and demand, but there are other data requirements within the DfE toolkit and suggestions about how that can be captured. We will be covering some of those in next week's webinar, where we'll be bringing in Duncan Brown, our senior economist, who's done a significant amount of work on that. The other challenge we picked up from our conversations with LEPs and mayoral combined authorities is being able to demonstrate progress by the end of October 2019 to the Department for Education. And there was a challenge there in that the initial funding that was given for this work was allowed for, or was given essentially for 1 year. And I feel from discussions with customers that there's an opportunity to lobby for more funding or to look at sustainability for funding for skills advisory panels, which obviously will get mixed up with being able to demonstrate progress by the end of October 2019. What we're looking at here, essentially our economists and our senior economist Duncan Brown has gone through the DfE toolkit and identified the proposed data requirements that can be met using Emsi's Analyst tool and the analysis that can provide. So what we've got here is we're looking at stage 1, analysis and definition of the local landscape. In terms of the current economic landscape, we've looked at demographics, industry, data, down to, from a high level view, down to 4-digit SIC codes, comparisons, job counts, changes in growth rates, as well as location quotient analysis. Location quotient is a way of understanding the presence of industries in your area, whether that's a LEP geography or down to the individual district local authorities. Occupations, again, high level overview down to 4-digit SOC, comparisons, job counts, and also location quotient analysis for occupations, the presence of occupations in your area. Also scenario planning, using our input-output model within the Analyst tool. It can be used as an approach to understand how the impact of prospective developments, changes in the local economy by industry and occupation through growth or also through decline. So the key data we're using here is Emsi industry, Emsi occupations, demographics, which is all available within the Analyst tool, and also the input-output model. There's also a need to look at performance benchmarks within and across different geographic levels. So we've looked at ways in which industry clusters can be understood using our Strength Finder tool. There are other webinars that go into detail on this, but also looking at GVA by industry at local authority, down to local authority level, which can be done through our Strength Finder tool. And also looking at regional pay levels, estimates of regional pay distribution by occupation, and using percentiles to understand that. So these are all sources of data that we feel relate strongly to the requirements within the Department for Education Toolkit. In regards to stage 2, which is the analysis of skills demand, strengths and weaknesses in labour markets were identified. We've looked at recruitment analysis using job postings data, and we'll go through that in a bit more detail as we go through the webinar, but really trying to understand distinctive patterns in recruitment activity, and we've captured that data since 2016, including mapping that across to key occupations, places down to town level, and also the skills in terms of hard skills and soft skills, and that can all be captured through within our Analyst tool through the job posting analytics. Secondly, we've got skills needs based on current and future demand. So skills demand overview, using occupations openings and projections going forward to 2027. It's a way of identifying the requirements for different occupations down to local authority level or at the LEP geography. And that will cover the skills demands at different qualification levels and across different industry sectors. So that's drawing on Emsi occupations data, but also the way we look at staffing patterns within industries and by occupation. Skills analysis can also be taken through identifying occupations according to their exposure to technology challenge, and identify the key skills within the LEP region which are likely to increase under different automation and migration scenarios. Now, we'll talk some more about this next week, but we are working towards having an automation risk by industry and occupation, and that's due to be within the Analyst tool in autumn 2019. More information to follow on that in next week's webinar, but also we will do webinars purely looking at automation. So stage 3, analysis of skills supply, and I think this is where we'll be spending most of the time today. What we're trying to understand is the available skills against those required in the area. So provision against demand, essentially. For further education supply, we've got a number of approaches which we'll look at, but we've worked with LEPs based on our work that we did with Gatsby Foundation around T levels. We've previously gone out to FE providers to capture ILR achievement data for all local further education colleges across a broad geography. We then construct a data set of achievements across the region that can be looked at in aggregate. For higher education supply, Emsi will provide a process assessment of all graduate achievements from the combined group of nearby universities. Emsi is in the process of securing HESA data, and that is due to be with us in the next month, if not sooner. As I've mentioned, ILR data can be collected directly from FE colleges, and we'll go into some more detail around best practice around that, which Martin will share based on our current conversations with LEP providers and what we've done previously in regards to that T-level analysis. Then there's the mapping of supply to demand. We can do this within the tool once we've captured the data. So education data will be mapped to occupational categories by level and subject relevance to allow for comparison between the supply of skills in terms of completions and in terms of curriculum offers and in terms of employer demand, really looking at job openings. Stage 4 is a mapping of demand and supply. So there's different types of skills gaps and their causes. Skills demand assessment can be carried out through reviewing the compiled data on skills demand alongside local intelligence to identify critical skills issues facing the LEP region, and looking at that going forward using our projections data, and that can be captured through our course vision tool. Again, we will go through that in more detail during this webinar. We can also ascertain if learner provision meets demand, looking at education gap analysis. So this is comparing future demands in terms of the labour market and the supply contribution of FE and HE. And through that, we can identify critical supply and demand gaps. And we feel this is key to moving forward the conversations with stakeholders within the skills advisory panel, to focus on those obvious and large gaps at different skills levels and occupation areas. So approaches to capturing FE supply data.
Yes, thank you, Will. So there's a few practical things.
Again, Martin, over to you. Good to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Yeah, so there's a few practical things that we can do in regard to sort of capturing the FE supply data. So first among them is the request for completions data directly from providers. So within the Analyst tool, we've got the option within the course vision module to upload this ILR or completions data up into the tool for analysis. That involves sort of going to the individual providers and sort of collating their data and sort of feeding that back to us for them to upload into the tool. The second thing we're looking at on an exploratory level is extracting completions data directly from the ESFA data cube. This is something we need to evaluate, but you know, if that proves to be profitable, we'll maybe be able to look at that as an alternative to going directly to the providers. So they're the main routes to the supply data analysis through the Analyst tool. A third thing we can do as an aside is commission a more in-depth study from Emsi to actually do some of that heavy lifting for you, so we can do like an in-depth supply and demand analysis. With regards the sort of data, completions data, as a long-term project, we are sort of looking at maybe getting national level figures from the DfE, but that is a long-term aspiration, if you like, for Emsi. So the supply demand analysis in Analyst, as I said, uses the course vision module, and this specifically maps openings, annual openings in terms of labour market demand against the completions for any given sort of subject area. Those subject areas are sort of mapped against the 4-digit SOC codes for the relevant industries, sorry, occupations. By doing this gap analysis, you then get a sort of a fairly basic indicator as areas of under or oversupply by course area. And obviously you can then focus on maybe the largest gaps in terms of under and oversupply, and that then informs your conversation with the relevant providers. In the tool, you will have the option of looking at discrete data sets by provider, but the important thing is actually to be able to aggregate that data into an aggregated view for your region, and this will give you the more complete picture. And then, as Will was saying, you can also use things like our job postings tool to give a little bit more colour and context to the data, to see, you know, where the sort of recruitment demand is, the kind of skills being sought by employers sort of actively in the market right now, and that will be useful sort of going forward. So a little bit about the process, how best to capture this supply side data. So at the moment we have, Emsi has a template which we can share with you. It's an Excel template, and in terms of the ILR data, there's literally only 3 data fields that we need. They're specified here. So the course aims code is the key thing, the course title, and then obviously the number of student completers. We can also sort of differentiate by different types of provision if need be, so apprenticeships, if that's going to be useful. So yeah, we can provide that spreadsheet. It's then for you to request that data from the colleges using that spreadsheet we provided with you. We can also provide a model data sharing agreement should that be necessary as part of your conversation, but hopefully you won't necessarily need that. The other thing to mention is that if the particular college that you're working with is one that Emsi already works with, and they're already using the Analyst tool or the course vision module, we can maybe sort of short circuit that conversation and help you obtain that data directly, obviously with the college's permission. So yeah, in terms of completers there, it's a particular definition, but we recommend using only learners who've successfully completed the course. So yeah, once the data is uploaded, you should have visible in the tool, you should have the discrete data sets for each of the individual providers, and also the aggregated view for the particular, well, for the most recent year is kind of how we're focusing at the moment. So yeah, you'll have that for the LEP geography by individual provider, and we have that data and we can then sort of map that into the tool, and it'll all be there in the course vision module for you. And on that basis, you can then run a fairly basic skills demand analysis using the Analyst tool.
Okay, thanks, Martin. I hope that's been useful. I've noticed there's been a number of questions come in. I might just pause now, just have a quick look at those questions. So bear with me a second, because some of it relates to things that we've already covered. Will there be another opportunity to look at additional questions as we get further into the webinar? Martin, are you still there, just because you might be able to help with some of these?
Sure.
One of the questions we've had is, what's the difference between Emsi occupations and staffing data? Essentially, sorry for any confusion there, within our occupations data and the analysis, we're also able to look at staffing patterns. So we're able to look at the range of occupations that would be employed within an industry. Good example would be a hospital won't just employ doctors and nurses, or have a whole range of occupations that will be employed by them. Our analysis allows for that to be monitored or to be measured, essentially, by looking at the staffing patterns by individual industries, but also looking at the range of occupations employed within them. The other question I've got here, what does looking at HE information for nearby universities mean? Our students study at universities across the UK. The really good question there. Essentially, what we're proposing in the first instance is to focus on institutions that are present in your area. In terms of the HESA data that we'll have, and we haven't got it yet, but we should also be able to look at by postcode at learners that are in other universities. But we would suggest, as a starting point, to focus on the institutions that are present in your geography. But there may well be a larger piece of work there which looks at the qualifications being studied by people that are living in your area but maybe studying remotely. And the third question I've got here, what would be the benefit of access data from national ILR versus data cube held at LEP level? That's a really good question. And we'll have to say the data cube analysis is a piece of work in progress, in that we are working with D2N2 LEP to understand what we can glean in regards to whether we can get all of the completions data that we need for apprenticeships and for FE provision through the data cube. We will be sharing that, the outcome of that, with all customers that are working on skills advisory panel work, but we're not quite there yet. I think the benefit of national ILR data will be that it will give a more complete picture. And by more complete, I think it will mean that you would be able to look at comparisons with neighbouring areas as well. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to any of those, Martin, or should we just carry on?
No, I think you've covered that there well, thanks.
Okay, fine. And like I said, we'll come back to the questions as we go through. I want to just, Martin's already mentioned this, but I wanted to kind of reiterate the value of the course vision reporting within our Analyst tool. 3 areas there. Essentially, course vision was designed to help, and it was developed in partnership with colleges to help them assess skills gaps in their local communities, and then to help them to be able to inform discussions and decision making in regards to aligning their curriculum against local labour market skills demands. And there are 3 reports in there. It says it here, but essentially there's a curriculum overview report. That's a high level view. Once you've uploaded completions data, whether that's FE or HE, it then compares that against regional job openings. When it says regional, that could be at your LEP geography or down to local authority level, or you could look regionally, but essentially it's looking at job openings, show areas of oversupply, undersupply, and the potential for new provision. The course area snapshot enables you to drill into a particular course area. Let's say we're looking at health and social care, and we'll give some examples of that in a minute. It allows you to find out more insight on the occupations and industries in your area that are connected to that particular course. And the business case report is more of a decision-making tool in regards to, provides a deep dive into the skills needs of employers in your area, draws in some job posting analytics, enables you to build a business case for developing new courses or changing existing ones. So here's a curriculum overview. This is using dummy data in regards to the completions, which you can see in the light blue. The dark blue are annual openings, and here we're looking at the D2N2 LEP area. And what you're looking at here is obviously whether annual openings, which will be new and replacement jobs, whether the amount of jobs being created is being met with by completions. And we can see here, we're looking at management, we've got hospitality and catering, health and social care. And you can see there are completions there for some of these, some there are none. And there might be a good reason for that, but we can see completions, and then we can see it in relation to the demand as captured through annual openings. There are also some other metrics there, looking at median annual wages and so on. But this is what it looks like in regards to the curriculum overview report within the Course Vision tool. Course area snapshot. Here we're looking at health and social care in FE provision. In 2017-18 data set, again for the D2N2 area. There's far more information that is captured within this, but it's just to give you an idea of how that's presented. It looks at the total jobs comparison to the national average. We're looking at 2017-18 median wages, and then what we're looking at are the occupations that have been associated with that particular course area, and the number of jobs and annual openings. So you can start to see the link and how we map together the subject sector, the subject areas, and the employer occupations. The business case report essentially looks very similar, but we're taking a deeper dive. Here we're on health and social care. Again, there is far more data within the tool itself. This is just a snapshot, but essentially what we're looking at is a deeper dive really into the occupations for that chosen course area. And as you go down, it continues to provide more information in regards to drawing on job posting analytics as well. Job posting analytics we have here. We think this is a really powerful tool for context, to look at recruitment activity on the ground within your local area. The example we've got here is D2N2, and you can see there job postings broken down by each of the local authorities, and also looking at the total number of unique postings from 2019. As I mentioned previously, this data goes back to 2016. We're harvesting the data from around 20,000 different job boards for postings of new opportunities. There's extensive modelling that's done to duplicate postings, which may be posted on more than one of those job boards. And it arrives at about 700,000 to 900,000 unique postings each month. Important to note as well, where our main data sources are updated annually, job postings are updated monthly. It's also worth mentioning the way in which that can capture activity in terms of companies posting. You can look at recruitment agencies as well. Here we're just looking at employers. For health and social care in D2N2, you can see who's driving that recruitment activity. It's important to mention as well, postings are extensively analysed and tagged, so they can be tagged to location, job roles in regards to the ONS standard occupational classification, but it also can go down to a much more granular job title taxonomy with more than 5,000 titles. So you can search within that rather than just by SOC code or by occupation, you can search by job title and also company names. So you can look at what you can search for the company and see what recruitment activity is being captured. So yeah, this would be who's hiring for health and social care. Important one to mention within job posting analytics are in-demand skills. Here we're just looking at hard skills, and these are captured through the job recruitment advertisements. Again, for health and social care, again in D2N2 LEP, but beyond this, and it's not captured on this image here, but there's also soft skills as well, which can be useful in regards to understanding what skills are being demanded and linking that back into the conversation with the provider base in regards to their current delivery. Particularly useful when we're looking at skills that are required in regards to IT skills or very specific skills. Right, we're back to questions. I just want to see whether there's been any more. Oh, right, so yes, we have got a few more. Are you able to set out for us the data you have and when you expect the new data HESA to arrive by data type and source? Right, so HESA data, we're in the process, we're expecting that in the next 4 weeks. Obviously, we'll need to do some analysis of that, but what we're looking to do is to prioritise our existing customers, skills that are working on skills advisory panels. But there will be a time lag there in regards to when we get the data, the analysis of the data, and then getting it into course vision, for example. More to update you on that once we actually have it. It feels like we're jumping the gun if we set out a timescale on that straight away. I'm not sure I understand completely by data type and source. So HESA data will capture a number of metrics, but really what we're focused on is in regards to completions. So what we'd want to see is the number of completions, and we'd look at academic year in regards to, that would be our focus initially. There is more analysis that we'll be able to do with that. And I may well set up a webinar once we have that data where we can further explore what can be drawn from it. Okay. Right, annual openings then that look at new or replacement jobs is interesting, but does not address the much bigger challenge of understanding upskilling and reskilling the existing workforce. Is there any way to get this data? Great question. Yes, there is, because we can look at the total number of jobs by occupation or by industry. So that will give an idea of the number of people within the workforce. By occupation, we map occupations across to the required skill level. But there is probably more analysis that could be done on that if there's a particular project on a particular sector. But yeah, we're not restricted to annual openings in terms of that decision making. We see annual openings as being key to that year-on-year demand and growth in demand by occupation at a local level. We feel that's the best indication. Might come back to that in more detail on next week's webinar when we have Duncan with us, and we can explore that a bit further. We'll also provide updates in regards to that question in regards to the HESA data. I'm just checking whether there are any more questions. No, that seems to be all of our questions. Right, I'd like to just do a quick summary. So we've looked at supply side data analysis, best practice. We've been quite open about the work in progress nature of the discussions that we're having with DfE in regards to national ILR data, but also in regards to us exploring the ESFA data cube. So future developments, we've talked about HESA, that's very shortly going to be with us. Longer term, DfE national ILR data. The ESFA data cube, we're looking to get to the bottom of that in the next month, if not sooner, so understand exactly what can be drawn from it and whether that gives us complete enough a picture. I also wanted to highlight that there's further work being done in regards to productivity. We talked about the automation risk measurement, which will be coming into the tool later this year, probably autumn this year. In terms of productivity, we're also looking at productivity by jobs and some additional measurements that capture productivity in regards to GVA. Just to be clear, GVA is within the Strength Finder report within the Analyst tool, and that goes down to 4-digit industry. We've also talked about the importance of demonstrating progress to the Department for Education. I also want to just reiterate, Martin's obviously joined us today. Thank you, Martin. I just wanted to mention that client services are here to help with this. Martin is our account director for economic development customers and here to help with those questions that you may have as you're going through this process. So thank you for joining us. I would like to recommend next week's webinar. So this is part 2. It is going to be slightly different. We're going to be looking at essentially we're going to be looking in more detail at some of the measurements that are within the DfE toolkit and different approaches that can be taken to understanding things like migration, for example, and that could be using existing ONS data sets. But we'll talk some more with Duncan and he'll share his thoughts having gone through the DfE toolkit and looked at where we have existing data sets that fit with that, which we've talked about today, and where there's other additional data sets that could be brought in. So we'll do a bit of a more exploratory discussion around that next week. That's on Thursday, same time, 11 AM. Finally, for those that are still with us, I just wanted to suggest that you hold this date. So Thursday, 24th of October, we're going to have an Emsi Economic Development Forum. We're going to be looking and providing customers with the opportunity to really understand in more detail the evidence base that they can draw from Emsi tools and our proprietary data sets. We'll also probably be looking at some more discussions around the impact of automation and how that can be measured. It's a work in progress, but hold the date, 24th of October. It's going to be in Birmingham, so central location. And I think it'll be really useful for customers that are using our tools, not only to be able to have sessions where we can dig a bit deeper into data, but also to be able to share their thoughts and network. So all that leaves me to do is to thank everyone that's attended today. Contact details for myself and for Martin are here. I'll be sharing the slides. If there are any additional questions, please do come back to us by email. And I hope that you'll join us for next week's webinar as well. Thank you for your time.